Hello everyone and welcome to the 5th Marketing Meetup webinar and the first ever on a rainy day, which actually I think might turn in our advantage. I think there might be a few more folks here tonight. Today we have the absolute pleasure of welcoming Lisa Targett. She's the General Manager of Tribe, which is a self-service marketplace which connects influencers, and not just big ones, to brands. Lisa herself is almost a bit of a meta influencer because she's influencers of the influencer marketing scene. And in 2 years and 10 months, she's been integral in moving Tribe to now be working with some of the world's biggest brands, such as Waitrose, Rimmel, Amazon, TikTok, Unilever. Tribe itself is backed by the former CMO of Unilever, Keith Weed, which in itself is pretty impressive. Lisa is a previous Marketing Meetup speaker and someone who I admire personally, lots and lots. On the night of her last talk, actually, and this was actually the first time this has ever happened and the last time it's ever happened, but the screen didn't work, meaning that those slides that Lisa had lovingly prepared couldn't be presented on the night. And yet, she still went on to tear up the stage with an informative, entertaining talk alongside the wonderful John Torrens, who presented later. It was a great night and one that I'll never ever forget, partly from terror and partly because it was brilliant. Just know this, Lisa is someone I hold in high regard and have absolute respect for. I think she's wicked. The reason this session in particular is relevant is that in the past 2 months, we've seen a monumental shift in how the world works. And I don't know about you, but a lot of the stuff that I've been seeing in the world out there has been very much based on reassuring people and helping them on an emotional level. But in the business world, I'm yet to see many talks or many bits of information on how people are really acting with success and, you know, actually just starting to make sense of the world. So I'm hoping by the end of this talk, Lisa, with access to some of the data that she has, will help us have a little bit of a view onto that sort of stuff, and maybe just start to gain a little bit of information into how the world is working right now. Before we go ahead, there's one thing which I really want to do, which is to thank the sponsors, all of whom have been absolutely unbelievable. I feel like it's been a real privilege these past 5-6 weeks where folks have just been like the Marketing Meetup is obviously an incredible community, but so many people have been so lovely and just sent me a message every so often just sort of saying you're doing an okay thing, which, you know, honestly means the world. But while I've received this praise, it's also really important that these sponsors get some praise too, because without them we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing. I've sent an email earlier today just to say here's the list. I'll send it again afterwards. If I have one ask, it would just be for you to message these folks and just say thank you for your contributions. So I'll mention them briefly. So Pitch, Content Cal, Fiverr, Redgate, Cambridge Marketing College, Ledo, Brand Recruitment, Further, Third Light, Bravo, and Human. If you drop the folks behind these companies a message afterwards, it really, really would go a long way, and a long way to help in the Marketing Meetup. So back to this session. Today we're going to have a presentation, so it's going to be a little bit like what we did with Rand Fishkin the other day, a presentation, and then there'll be an opportunity for Q&A. The Q&A feature is found if you wiggle your mouse, you'll be able to find it down the bottom and ask questions in there. I have some questions too. You can ask them throughout the talk and afterwards, although we'll start answering them afterwards. With all that said, I just want to say a big welcome to Lisa, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Joe. I reckon most of the attendees to your meetups come for you, not the speakers, because you're so lovely. But I will quickly share my screen with everyone. And I'm sure I'll be told if you can't see it. Hopefully you can see a lovely woman enjoying a Guinness at home.
You're all good. You got it.
So thank you all for having me tonight. I'm in a really fortunate position, having watched a lot evolve over the last couple of weeks, and working directly with so many marketers to just see how they're adapting to change. And I'm sorry I didn't come up with a more sort of millennial cool background. I've got no plants behind me. I'm on a sofa in Kent. But thankfully, I have a lot of beautiful images to distract everyone with as we go through this today. And I wanted to touch on a couple of things. One is who we are, who Tribe is, if you haven't heard of us. Give you a little bit of a lowdown on some of those insights I've seen in the last, almost, I guess it's 6 weeks, isn't it? Take you through some of the brands that I think are really nailing it, in how they're working with influencers, but also beyond that, and really thinking, I'd say laterally, about their marketing and adapting to the circumstances that they're in as well, operationally, creatively, whatever that might be. And then hopefully leave you with some helpful tips, and then opening up to the Q&A. So please fire away as many questions as possible. I made a really poor joke to Joe earlier that if I'm talking about marketers adapting on the fly, then I might as well be able to. So whatever goes wrong on this Zoom, I think we're cool with it. If videos don't work, apologies. I will send you a really thorough follow-up later for anything that is disjointed. I think we're all suffering a Wi-Fi meltdown. So in short, Tribe is a self-serve marketplace, and we exist purely to unlock the world's creativity and help brands connect with their everyday consumers to celebrate them through beautiful content. And, you know, we really flipped the model 4 or 5 years ago when this whole influence marketing thing was really starting to gain a bit of traction. And instead of hand selecting influencers and then asking them to go create content that was always largely not that authentic and not that social for social media, we decided to flip the model on its head. And instead we asked for influencers, or creators that they like to be called, to craft ready-made content in response to a brand's brief upfront. And our promise to creators was always that we were going to put more opportunity to them than they could access anywhere else. And with that opportunity, every single week, every time they open our app, they would get to choose which brands they wanted to work with, meaning, you know, authenticity was really always at the heart of the model, that there were real customers willing to go and spend their own money on a product. Otherwise, we always say, why allow them to recommend that anyone else does? And also giving the power back to the brands to be able to review content up front, make sure it's brand safe, make sure it's relevant, and really shorten the cycle of feedback between creators and brands as they started collaborating together. So breaking that down a little bit more, the content upfront model is really, really simple. A brand uploads a brief, creators submit that final content, the brand approves their favorites, and the creators rewarded within 24 hours. And that is really important in the current crisis, because it kind of gives us some very specific USPs that have put us in the position to have run over 250 campaigns in the last 6 weeks alone. And that is, the safety is in the hands of the brand. Like I said, they see the content up front, they see the captions, they can make sure that messaging is on point, that they're avoiding any PR crises, and also that they can adapt their messaging on the fly. It means that creativity is also at the forefront. So if you've got an inbox full of content from different creators who all love your brand, all want to celebrate their brand to their audiences, then you get to choose between that. And often they're competing creatively to stand out to a brand. So it really ups the creative ante to enable your brand to stand out in people's feeds. And then speed and scale are the two big ones that we've seen really benefit brands in the last couple of weeks. And I'll go through some specific examples, but the fact that we pay creators within 24 hours is not only great for a lot of our freelance creatives that are out there really struggling, but it means that they are in there earning and really responsive to brand briefs. So brands can move as quickly as possible with as little holding them back. And so from a Tribe perspective, in the last couple of weeks, we've really adapted ourselves by launching a podcast series where we started talking to some of the world's biggest marketers. We had Mark Ritson on there, and Tom Goodwin and Keith Weed, marketers from McDonald's and all over the world, and asked them, you know, what are the major questions that they're grappling with at the moment, and started to tackle them as everything unfolded. And these are the questions they came back with. And they're the ones that I want to tackle with everyone today, and hopefully show you some examples of how marketers have gone about answering them. The first one is, how can I continue connecting with my consumers in a lockdown circumstance? And I would say not even just lockdown, because there's going to be periods of change that we go throughout different levels of lockdown, for essential workers, for not essential, for people in main cities, for people who are more rurally connected. So that question's prevalent always, but in this certain circumstance, that's been a big question. The second one is, how do I get creative assets for my marketing right now when production houses are impacted? And the third one is, I'm sure we're all feeling this across the board, is my budget has been cut. So how can I achieve more with less? What do I need to be doing to be more ROI focused than ever? And really make sure that my budget is going as far as possible to trade my way through the period. So literally tackling them one by one, inspiring customers during lockdown, we've seen a couple of things start working. The first one is brands who are really listening and responding to their consumers in real time. Those brands as well who are finding this moment to elevate their brand's mission. Those who are working to tweak campaigns as information evolves as well, whether that be news or government updates. And also, it's really important for brands to be responsible. With all of this amazing brand activity and opportunities to communicate, you always want to make sure that, again, as a brand, the information you're using is up to date and is safe for social messaging as well. And this is an image actually from a Moonpig campaign, which was all about flower deliveries and personalized cards, because this was our first lockdown Mother's Day, where people couldn't physically be present with their families. So I thought that was a really sweet campaign. So touching on listening, like, social sentiment is such an underrated and underutilized tool. This is an example from a McCain's campaign, which was all about jacket potatoes. And everyone loves a jacket potato, and they're easy, especially, work lunches from home. Everyone's been enjoying them. And my favorite thing about this campaign was, the brand really allowed everyone to come up with their favorite fillings. And then apparently, hands down, tuna is the most popular. So it's feeding insight back to the brand directly from not just their consumers who responded to the campaign, but their audiences as well, to iterate further. And you can imagine either McCain's kind of taking this to another level to talk about, filling wars, or to talk about, leveling up the tuna filling. What are all the different variants there? Which I think is a really, really sweet way to listen and include the consumer voice, not just in your creative, but in your communications as well. This is a really great one. Rimmel is all about living the London look. And, the London look just looks a little different right now. So they changed their campaign. This is an example of the brief that they gave out to creators to get all sorts of looks. And you can see some of the approved submissions for changing their campaign to live the London look. Like staying home, staying in. We're getting camera ready every day, guys, so it doesn't change any opportunities for us to kind of put on a full face and enjoy that ritual as we always would with Rimmel. And I thought that was a really nice pivot, nice tweak to stay relevant. In terms of being responsible and staying up to date with government messages, this one was a great example from Arla Protein, who initially had a campaign live. It was sort of mid-March, actually pre-lockdown, around workouts. As the lockdown started, they changed everything to sort of park workouts or local workouts outside, and then evolved their campaign again to at-home workouts. Making sure they weren't actively encouraging consumers to go into open spaces and shared spaces, but instead work out from home, which I thought was a really nice way to keep moving, keep tweaking, and being reactive to real-time information. And from a real-time perspective as well, nothing has changed more than our home situation. And for any parents out there that have kids, I unfortunately can't relate. And one day I will think back at this generation and just marvel, I'm sure. But having your kids at home, trying to find different work from home spaces. And for me, I really love this brief from Logitech about homeschooling, which is You know, it doesn't matter what little space you have, a corner of the kitchen table, an edge of the coffee table, you know, you're going to own that space when you're doing homeschooling. And so I think, you know, creating these little spaces and having that brand, you know, live very differently to how they normally would, and also have a greater role, you know, because they're interacting with that technology every day, maybe not just for homework periods, but throughout the day as well. It was great to see a brand kind of step up and take their mission a little bit further, but also respond and adapt to the current setting and make the most of it as well. So there's a couple of examples. And I also wanted to show you just thematically campaigns we're still seeing go live at the moment. This is a Tate and Lyle Sugars one for supporting the NHS. We're seeing loads of socially responsive campaigns, whether it's supporting the Clap for Carers, where you know, brands are doing things on Thursday nights and scheduling posts. We saw the Light It Blue campaign, which was, you know, really trying to turn Instagram NHS blue, where people were doing nail art and they were baking cakes and doing face paint with kids and all sorts of things. This is Hellman's Ramadan campaign. So obviously Ramadan will probably look a little bit different this year, but it's still such an important cultural moment for families that are under one roof. And in general, we're seeing brands, you know, nail sort of sustainability messaging, fitness, hobbies. There are so many opportunities for brands to kind of get on board and work with creators in real time. And these are the general themes that we're seeing. And it's not, you know, people are always asking me, do you see particular categories being hit, like travel and events? But we're not. We're just so much, I think the first couple of weeks we just saw comms, where people wanted to, you know, speak to consumers and let them know that they were still active, still live, still open for business. But over time, that's really changed to strategy, you know, where people are saying, actually, this is the role of my brand in an at-home experience. And this is the experience of my brand that consumers are having right now. And although, you know, Hawaiian Tropic, I'm sure, would have loved to be all about travel content right now heading into Maybank holiday, they've changed to enjoying the sun, you know, in your space, whatever that space looks like. And you've seen those brands make those tweaks on the fly, which I think have been really great to see, without hiding away and just waiting for it to all be over. Then we get asked a lot about production houses and the fact that they're closed. We're having brands come to us saying, you know, all the shoots that we had planned are cancelled, and even if I'm thinking of a great opportunity to talk to my consumers and I want creative that represents that brief, I can't actually execute in a shoot. And so we say, you know, your customer's the answer to that. A quarter of Tribe campaigns receive a submission within the first 15 minutes of them going live. And on average, most of our briefs complete in about 2 days. So it's a burgeoning freelance creative group of people just waiting to, you know, explore your brief. And I have been astounded with what people can create at home. This was a Vaseline campaign from last year, which was, you know, took about 4 days to complete with, you know, brand new images, including their product. But you know, common sense applies. Either your customers will already own the product and have it at home and within reach, or as part of their weekly shop, they might go and get access to it. And even we've seen brands just get so unbelievably creative with Photoshop and editing tools to really bring your brand to life. So we always say, open the net wide, see what comes to you, and you know, I'm sure you'll be astounded. This Mine's Mustard campaign took 2 days to get over 171 submissions that brand just gets to choose from, which is fantastic. Some questions coming in. And it's as simple as providing a mood board. You know, this is a mood board that Sanctuary Spa provided their consumers, and then boom, on the right is exactly what they received back. And so, you know, giving them the visual cue and finding content that's going to generate and spark creativity is what our creators really feed off. And they're so good at nailing that brief because, you know, ultimately they want their content approved, they want to be earning. And the content has incredible versatility. You know, influencer generated content doesn't just exist and resonate on social. I would say that that kind of creative aesthetic is now starting to live and breathe in all sorts of channels. And we've seen, you know, it not just be used in sort of paid social ads, but being used in other advertising channels. And so if you've got an opportunity to generate creative full stop, you know, we always think that this content transcends completely beyond social, and encourage brands to think about that as well. It's actually a campaign we did for Bacardi back in the day when we were outside. But you can see exactly from a context perspective how influencer generated content can live and breathe in an out-of-home environment and in a traditional advertising environment, where it's eye-catching and it celebrates, you know, a community, and it celebrates exactly those kinds of hidden moments that we all know and can relate to. And although we say influencer marketing isn't yet performance marketing, and I'm going to go through its limitations from an ROI perspective in just a moment, we do see amazing results from a creative perspective. So just on an asset basis, user-generated content performs about 7 times higher from an engagement perspective with Facebook ads. But we're now starting to see even more information about user-generated content in other channels, and just across the board, that they resonate higher, that they're more representative of the consumer. And especially when you can use a high volume of different assets, you can really start to represent your consumer in a lot of different lights, people with all different families, backgrounds, locations, whatever it might be, which really can drive performance from a consideration perspective. And for me, the good thing about working with consumers and creatives to generate production assets is that, you know, this particular influencer example, it's all gluten-free. You know, she's really capped with what she can do with working with brands. I'm guessing she can't work with anyone that is, you know, not gluten-free, and she's probably going to try and stick to baking, it seems. Which makes total sense, because if she posted anything different, you know, the people, the celiacs out there that want her baking inspiration would think she was completely inauthentic and would probably unfollow her. But she's so talented, and that image for chapstick on the right is something that she created. And that's the thing, these guys have the tools, they have the creativity, they have the time, they have the skills and the talent. So we always say, you know, open them up, and by just working with creatives to generate assets they don't necessarily have to post to their audience, really blows the ceiling on how much they can earn as influencers, you know, because they don't have to just work with a handful of brands that make sense from an authenticity perspective. All of a sudden they can just generate assets for advertising use for brands that fit sort of outside of their niche or outside of their audience's interest. And for me, that creates a really sustainable future for the category, because what you don't want is a hashtag ad every post. People switch off, people will turn off social media because it's not authentic. And so making sure that these creators can earn sort of at a full-time capacity without oversaturating their feed with sponsored content is a really important thing for the sustainability of the channel. And some examples of where we're seeing brands use it is in, you know, across, you know, Google Display Network. In e-com, we're seeing really early signals of this increasing purchase rate on Amazon pages, where you can include real-time examples and not just product shots. In automated marketing as well, on site, through design skills. You know, we definitely envision a future where we plug straight into Canva and Hootsuite and everywhere else that you need those creative tools to actually produce assets from scratch. And, you know, brands at the moment are trying to create all sorts of content to engage their consumers, you know, really helpful ebooks about what you can cook from home with your family, whether people are bringing back direct mail. That feels like a channel that could be underutilized right now. Let's get back on it. And just like website content as well, you know, just making sure it's fresh, and that it speaks to the current experience. And I've said this before and I'll say it again, but, you know, we definitely see a future where the world's advertising can be generated by the very consumers it's intended to attract. And I think that's why we resonate with that kind of content, is because we see ourselves in it. And it makes sense to us for the brands that we love. And then the last question was all around budget cuts. This is about efficiency and making the most when you have very little. And I'm a straight talker, and I'm not going to tell you that organic is the channel that you can absolutely maximize your spend. I come from a digital marketing background and a performance marketing background, and organic has its absolute limitations from a social perspective. It's fantastic on so many levels, but from a performance marketing perspective, it is really restrictive. For one, audience targeting is difficult. Of course, you can, look at the audience, where the audience sits and what country, if you are working with a partner that has access to Facebook analytics, like Tribe. But in general, it's still kind of, to take an Australian saying, like bush math. It's roundabout, and you will have a sense of wastage, which is fine. We all have channels that include a level of wastage, and we can account for that. But Facebook and Google are really the sort of supercharged superpower of our marketers generation, and the precision targeting that they provide just doesn't match up with what you can get with organic at the moment. There's always no call to action, like writing hashtag link in bio. Whether your swipe ups are okay, but still, I think everyone can vouch for the fact that they are kicking back, swiping through stories. They're not swiping up to learn more about something, unless it's really, really value add. Unless there's a really strong offer, or something like a recipe that you do want to download. It kind of gives you more for the content that you saw. It takes a lot to disrupt someone from that really passive state through Instagram stories. And so, you really have to stand out in that space to drive conversion there. Attribution's really difficult as well. You don't really know what influencers are driving what from organic perspective, unless you're giving specific or individualized links. But again, no one wants to click on this influencer's profile and then the link in bio. We're creating so many barriers to learn more about the brand, that I think, we can use other channels to kind of maximize those steps. And then, of course, the ability to amplify just doesn't exist. There are workarounds and steps that we can take to either license this content, put it into a brand ad, or, historically we've asked the influencer to boost the post on a brand's behalf. But a lot of that is changing. And Instagram last year launched the paid partnerships tag, which was initially rolled out to macro influencers. There was no real rhyme or reason, and slowly it's been rolled all right the way down to anyone who has a business or creator account. And actually, we've even seen it on some people who have neither. They just have a regular profile where they can actually tag a brand partner, which is creating a dual tagging system on Instagram. It means that you can tag your friends, but tagging a brand partner is a very different thing. That's going to link straight through to a brand's ads manager and all of their sort of business accounts with Facebook, and enable them to do so much more from a paid perspective by leveraging organic. So for me, this tag was very intentional from Instagram to say, we don't want to do influencer marketing. We're happy for it to happen on the platform. But what we're going to do is use it to help our brands who are, working with us from a paid sense, make their work harder, because they know that influencer generated content performs better. And so the paid partnerships tab, all of a sudden, and you have to apologise the Australian examples here and there as well. We're originally an Australian company that launched in London about 3 years ago, and we share these examples all the time. And one which I'll show you in a little bit specifically was just too good to not share with you. But using the paid partnerships tag, all of a sudden, you have that direct link to the brand, meaning that Huggies can now see that from their ads manager. They can start to, really look at what posts are performing and which creators are converting for them. So something we would have been doing manually, spreadsheets sort of a couple of years ago, is slowly starting to be integrated into the channels that we know work really hard for us. And also we can have, using that tag, all of a sudden we're going to be able to answer some of the questions around amplifications and call to action and audience targeting that Facebook do provide us. And they're doing that through a new format called the branded content ad. And this essentially brings the world of paid and organic bang together. For me, it's a really, really exciting update from Instagram. And, it's definitely steps towards a future that I don't think is too far away from us as marketers. where influence-generated content is a very, very important creative asset for us from a social perspective. And turning something into a branded content ad, all of a sudden where we had paid partnerships at the top of the organic post, it now moves to the bottom, and this has turned into a sponsored influencer post. So where we would have back in the day asked that influencer to, you know, put some money behind it and promote it to an audience, all of a sudden that is in the brand's control. Because the brand was tagged correctly, they can now, with the permission of the influencer, boost that post to really broad audiences, to precise audiences, for remarketing, for conversion, for whatever they want to do. But the post looks and feels like an organic post. And it answers all of those questions that limited us before with organic. We can now target audiences. The call to action is strong because we actually have buttons. We can attribute what's working and why. And we can amplify until the cows come home. So in terms of, you know, really making our money work for us, if you're starting out and working with organic already, you might as well bring the world of paid efficiencies right on top and kind of level it out as pretty much a foolproof blended social strategy. I think we're going to see a lot of those things sat with, you know, influencer marketing and organic on one side and paid social over there, slowly start to integrate a lot more. And from an early perspective with data that Facebook's seeing, with paid assets, engagement doesn't necessarily correlate with brand outcomes. And we've always seen it sort of a generally flat association between engagement and driving any of these intent metrics that brands are measuring. But with branded content ads, that's changing. So we've found that taking a branded content ad that I've just shown you, which is essentially a boosted influencer post controlled by the brand, and also pairing that with a brand ad that has a thematic link in its creative, drives down the cost per action by about 79%. And brands are slowly starting to test this. I think we've probably seen our first little wave of tests from brands on seeing, you know, how they can run an organic campaign, also have a brand ad, and then match audiences via the boosting tool and their brand ad as well, and starting to really measure how this is working for them. And this is my presentation might really go to crap people, because I wanted to show you a video that I think just it is the perfect example of everything that I've talked about so far. And if I could kind of, you know, put it in a neat little bow, it would be this video. But I can also share this with you. It's an example in Australia where Pantene worked with real customers to drive, you know, an organic campaign around their rosewater restoring shampoo. And so these are people that were happy to go and use their own money to work, you know, to try the product and advocate for it to the audience. So they kind of tick the influencer marketing, you know, box like that. But then they amplified the top performing content and used the precision targeting of Facebook via branded content ads. And then what they did was take, you know, which one of the branded content ads are performing and how do we put more spend behind those? How do we learn? How do we iterate? How do we repeat what we've done with organic and paid kind of going hand in hand, and data and creativity, you know, being really, really glued together. And I think, you know, being adaptive is sort of the name of the game right now. Any of these learnings, you know, learnings behind audiences that we know convert, learnings behind organic audiences, learnings from our customers themselves as well, gluing all that together is really how we're going to win from a social channel perspective, if that's a channel that you know converts for you. So I'm going to try and play this video. It's a couple minutes, so bear with me and just hit me up with the question tool if it's really not working, but hopefully we've all got good enough internet.
Hey, Jules, I'm here, founder of Tribe. We are a software-enabled marketplace that helps your clients run influencer marketing campaigns. It's speed, scale, and low cost. We specialize in the left-right hook, combining organic with paid within the world of Instagram. So we help advertisers make contact with new audiences through organic influencer posts. They'll then identify the top performing posts that have built a connection and turn those into branded content ads to create conversion. So here's a live example. Facebook's Duncan Jones from CPG is helping P&G's Pantene team launch their new shampoo and conditioner. So Pantene sent this brief to our creators via the Tribe app. and it explains the type of content that Pantene was hoping for, providing their paid partnership handle, etc. So creators then went out and purchased the product if they didn't already have it. We believe if you don't own the product or you're not willing to buy it, then you actually have no right to recommend that your tribe does. But obviously, if clients need to provide sampling, that's not a problem. So creators crafted a story, carousel, or feed post and submitted it with a price. And it's crudely based on the size of their followers. So this inbox is what sets us apart from every other platform on the planet. Tribe delivers content up front, which means before Pantene has spent a cent on content, in just over a week, they received over 130 stunning pics and clips shot by their own customers, and they only pay for the posts they love. So here you can see everything from their predicted engagement to their audience demographics. And once again, if you like the post, you buy it. If you don't, you don't. Content up front is the ultimate in speed and brand safety. Once approved, the creator publishes it within 48 hours and they receive 100% of what they asked for. Tribe's 30% fee is added on top for the brand to pay. So to sum that up, for $15,000, Pantene had 48 influencers buy their product, shoot content, publish it to their audience, with the best 5 pieces turned into branded content ads for their agency, Starcom, to deploy and pay. Plus, they have a content library with another 80 beautiful submissions that they can have published at any time or turned into branded content ads. So that's a quick example, but we've done that over 13,000 times. That's how many campaigns we have delivered across the UK, US, and ANZ. In fact, our advertisers now receive over $500,000 worth of fresh branded content through our platform every single day. We have endless case studies in every vertical. If you'd like us to package some up and walk your client through a quick demo, just ask. If you've still got questions, there's no surprise. Tribe really is unlike any other influencer platform out there. We are built on authenticity, and that means a lot to your clients, who can now turn their own Instagram-loving customers into their marketing department, their creative department, and soon with shopping from creators, their sales department. And after all, who better to craft branded content your customers love than your customers themselves? Thanks for your time.
Cool. So I should have probably given you a fair warning about the Australian accent there. It's one of the most, I wouldn't say hideous, but definitely strong. But, you know, for me, I think influencers provide this direct to consumer channel, not just from a marketing perspective, but, you know, as a sales channel, as a creative channel. And we're really seeing brands start to understand when they have to move with agility, that consumers who actually have the product, who have, you know, the set that is completely relevant to all brands right now, which is their homes, you know, it's providing more opportunity than ever. And when you take it a step further beyond organic and kind of consider the opportunities in paid as well, you know, there's a lot a brand can do depending on their objectives, of course. And it's definitely not one size fits all. And I've had a look through some of the questions already, and I do think there's lots of discussion to be had as well. But before I get to them, the wrap-ups, you know, the takeaways that I have for everybody is, you know, listen and be responsive, and be reactive for what your customer experience is right now. And also be responsible, you know, make sure you're paying attention to government updates, and sticking with the times. You know, if there's one thing I've learned is that the cycle of cultural trends is becoming so tight. You know, house party was cool one minute, gone the next. And I think we're seeing the rise and fall of so many different opportunities for brands to kind of get on board. If you're getting on board with something and it's already over, you know, you're too late. And, you know, not being relevant is a real killer right now. Outsource your production. You know, your customers have the product and the setting. Bring creativity and data as close as you can together. Iterate, tweak in real time, and be as agile as possible. And remember that organic is always going to be limited. It's, you know, it's meant to be limited because, of course, Instagram and Facebook, or any channel, any publisher that has organic, whether it's YouTube, TikTok, whatever it might be, you know, they're always going to limit organic to an extent because, you know, they want to work with advertising from a paid perspective. So whether it's tweaking algorithms or it's whatever it might be, there are always limits to organic usage of any platform. And the last thing I wanted to land on was really for this community. And, you know, Marketing Meetup, you know, your mission is definitely about, you know, helping marketers learn, you know. So for us, we wanted to offer our hand in supporting that with the community here. And we've got a little landing page which we'll send around for this community specifically, which is if you wanted to organize a deep dive with someone in the Tribe team about trends, about ROI, about anything but specific to your brand and your category, there's a form there you can fill in, and we'll organize that with you as well. And for any campaigns that you do want to test in the next month, we're going to wipe our activation fees, meaning it's free to set the brief live creators and see what you get back as well. So hopefully that goes a long way. I just included that from the Lego campaign because I really liked it. But that's my email, my contact, should you guys want to contact me directly. But I'll work with Joe as well to make sure we've got a full follow-up. And answer some okie dokie, where are our questions going?
Awesome. Thank you very much, Lisa. That was wicked. I think that was from a perspective of, we have a lot of talks at the Marketing Meetup that like top 10 tips for content strategy or whatever it may be, but we don't take an awful lot of time to sort of dip into influencer world that much. And I think that sort of, even just the insights of the features, frankly, you know, with the paid partnerships and stuff like that, that's really, really interesting. So thank you very much. It was a really sort of interesting session.
My pleasure.
We do have some questions coming through, and if people want to send them through, then they can use the Q&A function. We're going to aim to do the session in about an hour, so we've got about another 15 minutes or so. But if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to start off with a question of my own, which it sort of touches on the point which you made right at the end there, which is that you're seeing a lot of folks changing day to day. It's not so much about, you know, what's going to happen next week, what's going to happen in 2 weeks. It's like, okay, what do we need to do today? And as someone who doesn't spend an awful lot of time in the influencer world, is this a new trend where people are looking far more short term, or do influencer campaigns tend to run very strategically over a long term, and this is just another change that has come around because of what we're living through at the moment?
Yeah, I think we see kind of campaigns and bursts. You know, a lot of people will have a strategy set over a year, and then they'll activate on that in little bursts, you know, month by month, or around cultural moments that make sense to them. They'll either work with the same influencers over time and really drive an ongoing collaboration, or they'll look to source new and fresh creators, you know, that are new fans of their product or haven't had the opportunity to work with before. Mm-hmm. So we see both. But yeah, at the moment, I've been so impressed. Like, you know, even that screen share, you know, you guys can download the Tribe app for free and just have a look at the campaigns that are live at any time. They're all hyper relevant. You know, they all have a voice and a purpose for the moment right now. And, you know, with Moonpig, for example, they ran out of stock. With their flowers campaign, they sold out, so they were able to pause their campaign and wait until stock levels came back up, and off they go again. And I think we saw that happening a lot, for sure. Waitrose, their website being down, Ocado putting people in queues, needing to change and pivot their communications all the time as they were, you know, dealing with different operational issues. And I think, although maybe we all kind of feel at week 6 of lockdown it's some stability, it will change again, because we'll start having some people out and work will look different, and you know, we'll have another phase to adapt to. So I think we are seeing a lot of brands really shorten their cycle of planning, to listen first instead of, you know, using, you know, long-standing data that is going to inform the wrong strategy right now, because pretty much most things are out the door other than fundamentals of how human beings are. Sure. Which is really interesting to watch.
Absolutely. And on that point, actually, are you finding that there's a change in the messaging that brands are asking for at the moment? So we're week 6 now. Like, was it really, really different in week 1 and 2, and now stuff's moving on, and if it is, what's the kind of sentiment that these folks are kind of going for at this point?
Yeah, I think initially there was so much about washing your hands, and that's died away.
Yeah.
Not that it's irrelevant anymore, but a lot of the messaging is about staying home, and even I think initially it was about adapting to that new way, like setting up your home office, like dealing with different routines that of things you would miss out on, and how you can bring that into the home. Now it's a little bit more about understanding that this is a temporary thing and maximizing the time that you've got. So we are seeing more DIY and hobby stuff and craft, which was probably a bit frivolous when everyone was going into lockdown and things were escalating every day.
Sure.
And I think it's naturally reflective of what's happening in wider society as well, where people are going, okay, well, we know there will be an endpoint and we're okay with how things are, and maybe try and make the most of the adjustment while you can. But equally, that changes brand to brand, because some brands will have to be a lot more sensitive to their consumer set, that are going through all different types of experience. It's really not one size fits all, which is why I like that you get the content up front, because the influencer kind of gives you the caption. They put the words in your mouth as a brand to say, this is the experience I'm having. And then the brand can kind of decide to work with them or not, if that fits in with their messages as well, which is really nice.
That's really cool. So we've got two questions here that are quite similar. So one from Kirsty and Aurora. So it says, what about companies that can't really continue offering their services right now? So stuff like live entertainment. Any ideas on how to keep people engaged on content creation?
I love it. And there's two that reference live entertainment theatres. So we actually were talking about running a campaign for a theatre group that were moving their cast to doing at-home versions. And even, I don't know if anyone's seen, the National Theatre Company has done a lot of live versions of their pre-recorded shows, like on YouTube. So they're finding ways to, again, support, say, the National Theatre Company via things like live broadcasts that are fundraising activities, and still have some sort of brand awareness, even though it's not necessarily fresh content. So there's a lot of live entertainment companies that are talking, and I would say live events companies as well, that are trying to reimagine that experience for their community at home. Because if you're a theatre lover and it's something that you love to do, you'll be missing it. And I'm sure that most people are trying to find ways to support their favorite companies and businesses. Things like Instagram launched a small business sticker this week, which means you can order or food deliveries or direct from small business brands that might not be set up with like sort of full e-commerce solutions or digital channels themselves. So I think the customer sentiment at the moment is to support the brands you love. I think it's important to have some sort of voice or interactivity with the community, even if you don't have a product for them right now. Ask them what they'd like.
Yeah, wicked. Actually, it's a really interesting thing that the user-generated content is seemingly so much more effective. And I feel like there's something going on where, well, I want to phrase this as a question. So do you think people are becoming more acceptable or more tolerating sort of like a lower quality of stuff, people doing it in their lounge, so the production quality isn't necessarily going to be high, but also is the influencer industry just professionalizing so much at the moment that they're actually just catching up with these sort of professional quality stuff? So I guess the first one would be, do you find that it doesn't really matter about the polish? And then the second one is, to keep up, should people be really looking to, I don't know, up their game as well? Is it?
Yeah, well, it does matter about the polish. We've had it's a lot of people say, it's a really tough model because influencers go into all this effort and they could get declined. But, majority of our influencers, like, a lot of them are earning on average within lockdown about £3,000 a month. So it's good earnings once you really understand what a brand is after. And like I said, that's not from influencers oversaturating their feed with sponsored content. That's influencers that are crafting assets for brands to use in advertising and their website and their EDMs and whatever it might be. And really who dictates that quality is the brand that's approving it. And we have a very high standard for creative, of course, and we as a platform, Tribe does not ever want to be an agency or compete with agencies. We work with Grey London a fair bit, the creative agency, and we definitely think that they it's like jazz, they start the beat and creators just amplify the volume. It's a really nice way, to pay homage to a great piece of creative. We've got a Cathedral City campaign at the moment, which is all about, making life cheesier, just adding a bit of cheese makes everything a bit better at the moment, which just resonates with so many people. And it's from a beautiful TVC that then inspired the creativity that was replicated by their real consumers in their home. And it's at that level, especially from a personalization where, you see different types of families. And I think it has a different role and a very complementary role to play with the big above the line stuff. Mm-hmm. But on the point of actual creative quality, mm-hmm. what is shot on iPhone is insane. We have so many creators that obviously use professional kit and cameras. Mm. Is magazine quality billboards. We always show everyone the resolution, but most of it can literally go straight into any advertising slot as big as 6 sheets and big digital out of home formats as well. So it's definitely at the right level.
Absolutely. And I think that will probably hopefully also answer Mark Wild's question about influencer marketing threatening the existence of traditional creative agencies, because if you're still using those agencies but just using influencers to amplify that seems like a really cool strategy.
Yeah, and I think it's about, it's a fast and slow mode as well of content consumption. Mm-hmm. And, to really maximize the power of Facebook and Google's targeting, we need to have a high volume and variety of assets, not just to beat things like ad fatigue, where we need to refresh the creative, but also where we are speaking to all those different personas, because Tribe ourselves, we don't just speak to small businesses, we speak to big enterprise brands in different regions. So we even have a creative deficit issue from a digital marketing perspective. And so we kind of really see creators fixing that problem. Mm-hmm. and maximizing, personalization and targeting, as opposed to ever rivaling big format storytelling, which there's just nothing better than our creative agencies.
For sure. And I think that probably also goes to answer Baz's question on getting a whole bunch of submissions in a couple of hours or days, and whether that devalues creativity. It's about the refreshness of it, which I really like that way of thinking. Mm. So there's a couple of questions. There's one here on B2B and one here on charities. And I bet you get this question all the time, which is, can influencer marketing work for ... So as we've had B2B and we've had charities here, do you have examples of people working with either and
yeah,
how they would?
So B2B, we've had, campaigns like HubSpot, for example, and Shopify talk about entrepreneurs working from home and setting up their businesses. Mm-hmm. With the B2B question, I always answer the same way, which is like, I am B2B and I want to see, conferences and tools and discover brands that are important to Tribe. And if you needed to catch me from an ad targeting perspective, pretty much only going to find me on LinkedIn or Instagram, which is personal to me. So I always think that from a context perspective, there's still massive B2B opportunity with Instagram as a channel. And then, that everyone wears multiple faces. I have a use for my social media with my friends, and also from a work perspective as well. And that duality can exist on Instagram specifically, but most social media. And then from a charity perspective, we work with so many charities. We supported the WHO at the very beginning of everything as well, to encourage staying home, to encourage social distancing, physical distancing, washing hands. And again, we iterated on that brief. And then partnering with NHS as well to talk about the clap for carers, and again, promoting social distancing, physical distancing. But, some of my favorite charities that use the platform are brands like Love Food, Hate Waste, who are all about, sustainability and making sure we don't waste a lot of food. You do amazing, campaigns with scraps of potatoes and you know, how to not let your, you know, potatoes go to sprout or whatever it might be. So yeah, loads of charities use it as well, and also, you know, a lot of those brands use specific filters and donation stickers on, you know, when they work with Facebook and Instagram directly, and working with influencers can amplify that work. So yeah, if you want any specific examples, do email me.
Nice. I guess the flip side to this is the question from Marie Helene, who says, does the model not work for anyone in particular? I'll throw that one up.
No, it's fine. Do you know, and again, I have to be direct with you guys. I was at a conference once, and there was a guy who ran a machinery company, which was sort of big machinery for building sites, like massive cranes. And, you know, I did have to say to him, I didn't think that our influencers would have access to cranes to create the content. That we could, you know, take pictures of building sites or something. You know, for some campaigns are just, you've got to think cleverly. If you've got a really niche audience, is it worthwhile working with organic channels? And if organic channels is right for you because of budget constraints, maybe we need to think about where your audience is. And if they are, from a B2B perspective, predominantly on LinkedIn, maybe it's about working with a different type of influencer, you know, very different to what you would have seen today, because we do predominantly focus on Instagram. But yeah, otherwise we just say there's a lot of creativity can come from not having the product. But typically it works really well for brands and creators who get access to a product.
Absolutely. Cool. So I'm deciphering this question as I go, so we can do it together. It's from my mate James, who says, how do influencers and creators who have older versions of high ticket items create content for brands? And he's given the example of cars, bikes, watches, computers, etc.
Well, I have an example of a Land Rover campaign that we did for their anniversary. And even, actually, I might even share my screen one more time. This one, which is, you know, Rocket Man. You're not going to get a picture of the film, are you? But, you know, people doing fan art and things like that, which is amazing. But, you know, the Land Rover campaign, we had 350 submissions over a weekend. People doing the most insane content of these defenders and taking them out around dirt, you know, tracks and with drones and all sorts of things. And, you know, they get creative. If they don't own a Land Rover, maybe they have a friend that does. But often when they don't own it themselves, they're so hell-bent on being authentic with their audience, they actually call that in the caption. I've always wanted a Land Rover Defender, and my best mate has one, and I'm so jealous. And we took it out for the weekend to celebrate Land Rover's, you know, anniversary, 100th year anniversary. So there are lots of things you can do, and you can always offer experiences. You know, you can put a brief and say, you know, tell us why you'd love us to take you on this experience, and if successful, we'll take you on it. You document it, and we can work together that way. So
nice.
Easy.
I like that. Cool. I think that's there's two questions left of which aren't more comment based. So the first one is from Simona, who says, based on the influencer selection process, typically it's done on the quality of the content that folks do, but she's asking about whether you can match on the basis of the personality / profile of an influencer.
So thanks for that, Simona. I didn't want to go into like a huge amount of detail from a tribe perspective, because, you know, what I was hoping to really talk about was responding in a crisis. But specifically with tribe, you can look at everything at a post level. You know, you can then drill into, look at the influencer's feed, you know, see their personality. You can interact with the influencer, you can chat with them, you know, live. You can see where their audience sits, you know, and you can rank the inbox on engagement, all sorts of things. We pretty much have every tool you can think of, but we really didn't want influencer marketing to be built on ego. We didn't want it to be about socialite media and not social media, where people are being gifted product, and it's just not right for us. We wanted to be a bit of an anti model, and even, you know, kind of see ourselves as the anti stock image library, which is, you know, when images are too generic, how do you bring some life and some reality to them as well? And it seems like consumers are responding to that.
Sweet. And then the last one from Thana, I'm sorry if I got the name wrong. So I think they're probably concerned about whether by brand promoting an account, if an account is otherwise rubbish, you know, how would that reflect, you know, and sort of boost that individual? So
it's a really good question.
Yeah.
And it is the first format ever where a brand would be putting their spend and be linked to an account. You know, yes, you could be tagged in a, you know, a post before, etc. But it's, you know, in that instance, it was Huggies putting their money behind pushing that account. And so, yeah, I think, you know, really understanding that the profile is the right fit for your brand and not just the asset. If the asset's good, license the asset from the influencer and put it in your own brand ad. But to actually promote the profile, you know, there has to be a level of brand fit and brand match there. And also from the influencer's perspective, you know, they have brand to do it, are essentially given permission for their profile to go far and wide, which could include maybe nasty comments. You know, it's got pros and cons. They could get a lot of new followers that really love them, or it could attract some attention that they don't want. But that's why Tribe helps brands and creators manage that consent process to make sure that they know exactly what's happening, that they know exactly for how long, and where the content's going, etc.
Nice. And sorry, I did say that was the last one, but there's one more that's come through, which I think would tie into something else, which works really well, which is Ushma is saying about looking to build their own followership, but she understands that the market is saturated with people of certain types. They've characterized it with taking their clothes off or slapping loads of makeup on. But one of the things that it might be quite useful to touch on is the rise of the micro influencer, because I think that's probably something that is like just super relevant to everything that you do.
Yeah, and our platform is built on a micro influencer. You know, it's anyone from 3,000 followers plus, but on average, the kind of creator that is successful in Tribe has about 30,000. I personally do not think that is micro, because I can't get past 1,200 at my heart, you know, trying my hardest. But if this is something that you want to do, if taking your clothes off and slapping on loads of makeup, each to their own. If that's not for you, fantastic, don't do it. The whole thing is built on authenticity. And you want to do something that you're happy to talk about and celebrate with your audience and foster a community around. And for me, those things don't cut through. They aren't original. And I don't necessarily think that that's what generates engagement. What generates engagement is creating a true social connection. And for me, the best advice I can give you is, when you're starting out, you actually get to talk one-to-one with every new follower you get. You can lean in, you can ask them questions, and as you build that audience, you don't get that opportunity. Kim Kardashian cannot reply when she's got 80 million followers. So actually the power in fostering that community comes at a smaller size. That's actually why we recommend brands work with micro-influencers, is because it is a little bit more one-to-one and a trusted connection. But for you, you'll be able to get, you know, sense check from your audience about what content they like, what they don't, and really build and iterate from there, as long as it's in line with your passions as well.
That's wicked. And like, I mean, isn't that just what life's about? Like being, you know, just looking after each other and being you. That's all it is. Sweet. Well, that was awesome, Lisa. And thank you so much for spending so much time on the questions as well. Those some really great questions. So
there were.
Appreciate
and nice comments. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, it's great. So I just want to say thanks to Lisa. You'll be getting a follow-up email very shortly with some resources from Lisa, from us. So that will go through quite soon. The video will go up soon as well as the podcast. Just to reiterate the message at the beginning, please do take the time to thank the sponsors. It really makes a difference for everything we do. And that's it. Your Tuesday night is complete. A Marketing Meetup webinar done. So thank you very much, Lisa. Thank you for spending the time.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Take care, and yeah, look after yourselves. Keep washing your hands. Take care.